Bitcoin Matters.
In this episode, we're going back to school and learning Bitcoin 101 as Akeen addresses many of the most common questions that we've heard from people wanting to learn more about Bitcoin. Hope you enjoy it. Okay, so Akeen, what is Bitcoin?
The real answer to this is, why are you asking this question in the first place? Nobody asks this sort of question about Twitter or WhatsApp. They just get on with it and use it. This is what has to happen in Bitcoin. What Bitcoin actually is under the hood is not as important as how you're able to use it and the interfaces that are shown to you. So it's a good idea to stop asking this question if we're talking about Bitcoin reaching millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, which is what we want. What Bitcoin is doesn't matter. What it does and how it works on the surface is what matters when we're talking about the public.
So isn't it true that we don't know the real identity of the person or persons known as Satoshi Nakamoto who invented Bitcoin?
Once again, the similar answer is appropriate here. Why do you care? Why do you care about who Satoshi Nakamoto is and who invented Bitcoin? Nobody can name the person who wrote WhatsApp or Instagram, and yet it's used by hundreds of millions of people all over the world, and they just don't care. They just get on with using it and have a lot of fun using those applications to get utility out of those applications. So who Satoshi Nakamoto is or was is irrelevant to Bitcoin. It literally means nothing. So don't ask who the Satoshi Nakamoto is. It doesn't help you use Bitcoin.
Do we know why Satoshi created Bitcoin, or what's the purpose behind Bitcoin?
We do. That means you and me and all the other hardcore Bitcoiners. But the people who we want to start using Bitcoin, the millions upon millions of people out there who are WhatsApp users, Facebook users, Twitter users, it doesn't matter what the reason why Bitcoin was created for. These people don't care about economics. They don't know anything about Austrianism. They don't know anything about monetary theory of any kind. All they want to do is get things done. They want to buy things. They want to send money back and forth. So all of the arcane mystique and rationale behind Bitcoin is entirely irrelevant. And I'll give you a good example. WhatsApp was made encrypted by a small crack team of hackers from Whisper Systems. And that was rolled out to WhatsApp so that everybody's communications on it were impenetrable. All the users, 1 billion of them, of WhatsApp, don't care anything about public key cryptography, who invented it, its history. It's irrelevant. They just want to get WhatsApp messages done. The fact that WhatsApp is private now is very good for them, but they didn't need to know about all those things in order to be able to use it. That's what has to happen in Bitcoin.
So who controls Bitcoin and makes it?
Who controls Twitter and makes it? Who controls WhatsApp and makes it? Who controls any website? Nobody cares. The only thing that matters is when you go onto these services, you get what you expect to get. You get utility out of it. It makes your life easier. It makes things better for you. You have fun. That's what matters. Nothing else matters. So who controls Bitcoin, who the miners are, all the incentives and protections and balances that are in it, nobody cares. When we're talking about 1 billion people using Bitcoin, it's totally irrational to expect all of them to understand the gubbins and the inner gears of Bitcoin. It's not going to happen. So we need to concentrate on the sorts of things and thinking we need to concentrate on that will make that happen, leaving all of this stuff out because it's proven not necessary to have a global scale product.
So basically, Bitcoin is a magical internet money then?
Oh, for all intents and purposes, actually it is, because everything on the internet, every single service is indistinguishable from magic because nobody knows how anything works. That's the reality. So in a very real sense, Bitcoin is magic internet money that just comes from one place and pops up in another place like magic.
But isn't Bitcoin just used for drug dealers and prostitution?
So are telephones. So is the car. So is gasoline. Every single tool that people use, whether it's a pair of scissors, a pair of pliers, a glass, pen, pencil, you name it, it's used for bad things as well as good things. And because crime is a minority activity, the numbers of people who use ordinary objects and services to do bad things is vanishingly small. It's not a characteristic, a fundamental characteristic of what these services and objects are for by nature. So, for example, if you have a hammer is used to bang nails into wood. It's not used bang, bang, Maxwell Silver hammer to kill people. That's a very super minority use case of a hammer. And so you can't think about hammers reflexively and crime in the same thought unless you're literally crazy or Paul McCartney writing a song. So it's very important to stop thinking about Bitcoin in the context of the minority use cases, which are vanishingly small. And it's not just me saying that, it's Interpol who says that. So this is not just Bitcoin fanaticism, it's a fact.
Okay, so what's the easiest way for me to go about getting some Bitcoin?
The easiest way for you to get Bitcoin is Azteco. And that's a voucher system where you go down to your corner store, get a 16-digit voucher code, and redeem it to your Samurai wallet. You can have Bitcoin literally in 5 minutes. It's the easiest way to get Bitcoin, and many more services like this that are simple like that are going to be launched in the future. And the way people get Bitcoin now will seem like the most archaic nonsense compared to the way Bitcoin is going to be used in the future. That's guaranteed.
Well, okay, so you mentioned a Bitcoin wallet. What is a Bitcoin wallet?
A Bitcoin wallet is exactly the same as your WhatsApp. Instead of seeing messages coming from your friends, you get a number that's sent to you from your friends. Instead of getting a DM over Twitter, you get a number from your friends. It doesn't show messages other than a number. So that's exactly what a Bitcoin wallet is. It shows you how much Bitcoin you have and how much you can send. That's all a Bitcoin is. That's all you need to know about it.
So is Bitcoin safe?
Yes, Bitcoin is safe. It's as safe as WhatsApp. It's as safe as email. It's as safe as all the other tools you use and never think about the safety of. When people get into a car, they don't think, is this car safe? They know that they have to get from A to B to do whatever they have to do. So Bitcoin is safe. Bitcoin is perfectly normal. And in the future, it's going to be even more normal than it is now. You must remember, Bitcoin's now been running for almost 10 years without flaw. So we know for certain by experience that it is safe.
But can't people steal my Bitcoin?
Well, yes, they can in the correct circumstances. They can also steal your iPhone. They can steal your car. They can break into your house and steal your kitchenware. Does that mean that cars are unsafe? Does that mean that iPhones are fundamentally flawed and not useful? Of course not. People only ask this question because they've read in a newspaper that somebody somewhere has some Bitcoin stolen. But that's not the fundamental characteristic of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not about problems. Bitcoin is not a problem. Bitcoin is a very useful tool, just like any other tool. It's useful like your house is useful. You don't have a house without locks in it. And with Bitcoin, you have to have locks on your Bitcoin. You use those locks when you use the apps that are correctly designed, like Samurai Wallet. If you have Samurai Wallet, it's extremely unlikely that somebody's going to steal your Bitcoin. In the same way, if you have a good lock on your door, whether it's your car door or the door to your house or windows to your house, it's unlikely that somebody is going to get in. That's a fact. The vast majority of properties on Earth are not burgled. Burglary is a minority event. It's not a majority event. It's the same thing with iPhones and Android. The vast majority of these users don't have problems with them. So Bitcoin theft is going to be just like that, a minority event that happens to some unfortunate people, and it's not a characteristic of Bitcoin in any way.
So how much is Bitcoin going to be worth someday?
Now, that's an interesting question. Now, there's two classes of users who are using Bitcoin now. People who are speculating on its future value, and people who just use it just to be using it. So if you're a speculator, you buy some Bitcoin now in the hope that it's going to increase in value. That's a rational assumption to make. But there's another class of user who uses Bitcoin just for the moment. So if they take their salary in Bitcoin, they then spend that Bitcoin on the things that they need, like food, rent, and everything else. And so the price of Bitcoin doesn't matter so much to them because they're accepting it and then spending it almost immediately. So depending on how you use Bitcoin, the price has a different meaning to you. And that's going to be very obvious in the future. And also remember, the volatility in Bitcoin is going down. If you look at a chart over the last 5 years of Bitcoin volatility, it's sloping downwards. So eventually, the price of Bitcoin is going to flatten out, just like the adoption rate of many of the transformative industries and products is asymptotic. In the end, it slopes and starts to flatten out. And that's when we'll have been past the transformation away from fiat into a Bitcoin-mediated world.
Should I buy Bitcoin or other cryptos? And I mean, like, aren't they all the same thing?
Well, they're not all the same thing, apart from them all being made out of math. Bitcoin has some fundamental properties that make it different from everything else. So you should only use Bitcoin at all times. Don't buy altcoins. Stay away from altcoins. Altcoins are bad. Bitcoin good.
Well said, well said. Will Bitcoin replace physical cash someday?
Absolutely, yes. Physical cash that people are so enamored with and so fond of is something that steals from the user. Bitcoin doesn't steal from the user. So the nostalgic desire to hold on to cash as if it offers you something that's good is basically brainwashing. Bitcoin is very superior to cash, even in its present state, where it's possible to trace where Bitcoin has been. Because it's not controlled by the state and it's a limited supply, it's more money-like than fiat cash. So hopefully Bitcoin will replace physical cash totally, and we'll never see its like again.
Okay, wait. I've heard Bitcoin is bad for the environment, though. It uses a ton of energy, like even more than the country of Ireland. Isn't that true?
Well, there's no such thing as energy for a start. Yes. When you have a swimming pool, an outdoor swimming pool, and you use electricity to heat it up, that's your electricity that you're using. There's no such giant pool of electricity that the communist collective owns in aggregate and doles out to people based on need. Electricity is a service. And when you draw it into your circuits, it cannot be used anywhere else other than in your circuits. And you pay for that. And what you do with it is your own business. So that's one aspect of it. Bitcoin does not waste electricity. This is a fallacy. Second, people are starting to say that Bitcoin is bad for the environment. This is false. If you look at the pie chart showing the amount of electricity used for aluminium smelting, which in America they call aluminum, the amount of electricity used to do that is orders of magnitude greater than the amount of electricity used to mine Bitcoin. And remember also, the people who are using electricity to mine Bitcoin are choosing to do so. They're paying for a service, and that service is self-contained. What they choose to use that electricity for is their business. It's not the collective business of quote-unquote society. So whether or not Bitcoin uses more electricity than some other function, that's a private function. And if the people who are mining Bitcoin are making a profit doing it and are satisfied with their use of electricity, then there is no problem. So you've got to be very careful of these emotional, environmental arguments against Bitcoin because they are fundamentally irrational.
This week's Q&A question comes from Bitcoin user 6102 at 6102 Bitcoin, who asks, imagine the year is 2140 and Bitcoin block reward is now 0. There's no inflation and governments have accepted Bitcoin as global money. What change are you most excited about which has occurred as a result of Bitcoin's decimation of fiat?
Thank you for that question. It's a very good question. Okay, the year is 2140. And in 2140, I'd be most excited about being alive to see it.
It's a miracle.
Some kind of medical miracle would have happened for me to be alive to see the decimation of fiat. So that's the first thing. But on a more serious note, Bitcoin will have some very important side effects on how people buy and sell things in the sort of society everybody lives in. The consumer society will be abolished by Bitcoin. And that's going to be a very good thing for environmentalism and for the way that goods are produced in the market. If you're in a throwaway society where because your money is losing value, you're encouraged to spend it, goods are produced that people don't need, and they're produced in a way that's not to last. Things are not designed to last. So you'll buy a pair of shoes expecting to throw them away in 6 months. But in a Bitcoin-mediated society where all investment comes from savings and people save money and conserve money because it maintains its value, you're going to buy a pair of shoes or a jumper that you know is going to last you 20 years at a minimum. And so we're going to go away from this consumer society, throwaway society with all of its insane packaging and wasteful practices to one of thrift. That's going to have a very beneficial effect on the environment because the amount of waste that's being produced today is a direct result of Keynesianism. That's one of the effects. The other effect is going to be that the state won't be able to spend whatever it likes by printing money. Everything that the state spends will have to come from taxation directly. So a lot of the things that people assume are normal today will be abolished entirely. And because taxation at over 100%, which is what's happening today, is intolerable by any normal person, a massive constraint on the state is going to be imposed in 2140. And I imagine it's going to happen even before that if the transformation to a Bitcoin-mediated economy happens before 2140, which is when the last big block reward, when the last Bitcoin is going to be mined. So Bitcoin is going to change the world in very profound ways, and it's going to be better. We're going to have a cleaner world. We're going to have a more fiscally disciplined world. And there's not a single person that won't be affected by this beneficial change.
Thanks so much to Twitter user 6102 at 6102 Bitcoin for your question this week. We'll be sending you a Azteco voucher. Thank you for tuning in to Bitcoin Matters. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube or a review in the iTunes store. To learn more about Bitcoin Matters, please visit us at bitcoinmatterspodcast.com.